Hi, friends. All right, so I've taken a little time off again as I kind of do my own inner work, which is really important for me to be able to continue putting out material because I can't put out material unless it's actually coming from my own experience. And, the deeper I go into the whole mind body world, um, the more I see that everything depends upon the unconscious. And the unconscious is like our storehouse, and it's where the brain has filed everything that it doesn't feel safe about, that it perceives as dangerous. And these can be things like speaking up for ourselves, right? When things don't feel right. And I am very much familiar with a lot of this stuff because I had that mind body personality that when I was growing up, there were a lot of things that weren't safe. And so I had a file cabinet that I didn't know about. And going into that file cabinet has been one of the most remarkable things that I've ever done. And, and back when I was a teacher and giving satsang, there was an element that I always knew we had to get in touch with the shadow. We had to work. And I was doing that to a degree, but I didn't have access to the unconscious. I didn't have access to that file cabinet, okay? And the file cabinet stayed hidden from me and still influenced my behaviors, my thoughts, and how I compromised my own authentic self. And and so this compromise of our own authentic self, and I've mentioned this before, is how we get symptoms, okay? Because we're compromising in order to stay safe. And when we're compromising in order to stay safe, that is a continual message to the brain that there's danger. So we're just feeding the loop, right? When we keep engaging in those behaviors, like, worrying about what people are thinking and saying the right thing and doing these things in order to stay safe, but it's not. It's what it's doing is it's perpetuating the danger message to the brain. And so we want to gain access to the file cabinet so that we can really understand these behaviors and these hidden influences. And this is what Jung called the shadow, okay? And I'm sure some of you are familiar with this. And the shadow is the unconscious. And because it's a shadow, you can't access it. It's not something you can get a hold of intentionally. And you have to learn how to convince the brain that you're safe enough so that the file cabinet starts to open, okay? And takes a tremendous amount of intention. And, there's some really amazing Jungian wisdom out there that is about what awakening is, and that other side of the coin, which is the shadow. And a lot of people just think it's about awakening, but it isn't. Awakening kind of makes you realize. I mean, for me, awakening was like, oh, wow, I'm on a path. I mean, that's how awakening was for me. It wasn't like, oh, I just had this great experience and now I'm somebody more advanced. That wasn't it at all. Consciousness sort of like opened the door and said, you are on a spiritual path now. It's time to get serious about why you're here. Okay? And the shadow is the serious, it's the intention. Okay? And a lot of us don't realize the shadow exists until things like chronic symptoms and difficulty like that starts to happen, right? And it's life's way of saying, you're here, you've got your soul lessons here, and they're here, you're here to learn them, okay? And heal and grow from them. And I'm going to talk about this a little bit more in another video, because if we're not accessing the shadow, we are not going to really enjoy our path at all, because freedom is about freeing the shadow. Okay, liberation is liberating the shadow, because in the shadow lie all the fragmentation of self, everything that's disassociated from the whole, everything that feels separate from life. And those are going to show up in lots of different ways for each one of us. But that is what we're doing, okay? We're not here to feel better, because the shadow isn't pleasant. It can suck big time, okay? But once you start to get skillful at it, you're becoming a master. All right? And this is what we're here for. We're here to learn how to be a master of our own unconscious, and learn how to master the mind-body complex so it is not controlling us. And if we have mind-body stuff, which most people do in some degree, the mind-body complex is controlling us, okay? And so we're like a victim to it, right? Oh my God, my back, or my headache, or my digestive stuff. And it controls us. And so recovery and embodiment, which is kind of the same thing to me, the edges are really blurring now, is about learning how to convince the brain that you're safe enough so that it starts to reveal the shadow, okay? And that's the work. That's the work. It's not about anything but that, because you will not feel free, you will not feel liberated, and you will not feel like you have a skillful a tool set, skillful means to master the mind-body complex in the way that you're meant to. And teaching the brain how to feel safe enough so that the shadow starts to reveal itself is also a skillful means. So you've got a kind of a two-pronged approach. It's teaching the brain that you're safe enough so that the shadow starts to reveal itself, and then it's also how to meet the shadow, okay? And so, a lot of people will use different things to manage the shadow. And we don't want to just manage the shadow. We want to liberate it. We want to integrate all those fragmented parts that feel separate from the whole. And it's integration that becomes a seamless sense of self. And learning how to meet the shadow and learning how to show the brain that you're safe is the way that we're going to start moving into integration. And integration is very important, okay? And I'm going to talk about that more. And, one of the things that we kind of avoid is really taking time for ourselves. And this is something that is super important. And it's hard when you're living in the world because you've got your friends and you have your influences and you want to, kind of accommodate all that stuff. But when you're working in this arena, you really might have to kind of break free from that and start to really be clear about your priorities. And you might even feel like inside, like your soul is guiding you to just kind of withdraw from the world a bit and really give yourself a lot of time. I know I did, and I still am. I am still very much kind of in my own space most of the time. And then I can, engage in a healthy way. But just feel the inner impulse and see how the ego might be fighting this. Because it's only the ego that's going to fight this. Because the ego doesn't want integration. It doesn't want the shadow. The shadow is too fucking freaky. It's too hard. And that's what the stories that the ego will tell. It's too hard. Okay, but it's not. It's not that hard. Once you learn how to do it, you're going to get better at it. If you want to. Okay? All right. I'm going to leave it there. Okay? And I will talk to you soon.